Hey, fellow pastors, McKay here. I want you to consider something about how you frame your sermons. Most of us have learned to create main points, and we all know what main points are, and we can structure them in different ways. We're simply trying to look at a text and have a homiletical pathway whereby we can communicate this passage to our listeners. What I have found in my own experience is that when I have historically used main points, I have left way too much grace on the table. And the reason I say that is because most of my main point preaching has been to preach to the cross, not to preach to the cross. And we have to get there, but to and then through the cross. So we're preaching both positional grace as well as showing how positional grace leads to transformational grace. And that's what I really missed for most of my preaching ministry. And what movements do is something altogether different because it's built in. With main points, they tend to be artificial because we have to generate them ourselves. We're inventing an outline. But the principle of movements says that there is already an outline embedded in the text. It is inherent to the biblical meta-narrative. Because if we think in DNA terms, the biblical story, as let's say an oak tree, has DNA. Every text that is part of that oak tree, let's say it's like an acorn that falls from that tree, it's going to share that DNA. And the DNA of the meta-narrative is creation, fall, redemption, and restoration. All 4 strands of DNA. Now, we might be able to weave those strands of DNA in developing a main point message. But why not just follow the organic movements that are already there? What I mean by movement is that main points can be static. You can even preach those 3 points as individual sermons often. But what these movements do is take you on a journey. These start somewhere, and each one develops from the other so that you have what is true, how the flesh resists what is true, how we have a hero show up and redeem our resistance by fulfilling what is true in death and life. And then we see how we get now to live a new way in view of and in union with the hero, who his sacrificial act changes everything. That is the story of the gospel. It's actually the story embedded in every single text. So we don't have to invent a new outline structure every week. We simply unfold the DNA, that story that's already there. A stage is set with the truth. Conflict is introduced with the flesh. Then we have the hero Jesus show up and new life in the Holy Spirit. It's all built in. And it's never repetitive in the sense that it's the same sermon because we're dealing with different texts, different topics and themes, but they all go to the cross and then through the cross. That's the beauty of using the biblical movement methodology of framing your sermons. And so why use these organic movements versus artificial main points? I hope it's clear that it is uniquely biblical. It is incredibly engaging, where people know we are moving forward through this message. Each part is purposeful. It's connected to the next. And best of all, the structure builds in the requirement to be sure we preach to the cross of Jesus and then through the cross of Jesus so that God gets full glory for all the grace that we're not leaving on the table anymore. Because if justification is 100% by grace, it's 100% His glory. So is adoption, so is sanctification. Because all we do is we abide in the vine, our union with Jesus, and the Spirit fills us, and He gets the glory through all the change. A lot more on the dynamics of that with other videos, but let me just encourage you to think about using movements versus main points. Questions? Feel free to reach out. Of course, this whole process is built into our sermon studio, Preach 360. If you want to try it out, go to preach360.com. My name is McKay. I look forward to seeing you next time.